your triggers is great, but how on earth are you supposed to keep calm when you're actually in that triggered moment? That's what we're gonna be talking about today on the Worthy of Show. While it's great, I talk about triggers a lot, but how on earth are you supposed to keep calm when you're in that moment, especially when you are actively learning how to manage your triggers? Well, number one, I just want you to know that I wrote an ebook all about triggers, where if you haven't grabbed it already, I want you to go into the show notes if you're listening on the podcast, or down in the description if you're watching on YouTube. It is completely free. It's an ebook that I wrote that breaks down my entire triggered framework that teaches you how to find, manage, and cope with your triggers. As you are going through and working on finding your triggers, there are going to be things that come up that are going to feel a lot more intense than they did before. And the reason why is because as you're going through the triggered ebook and as you're doing this work, you're gonna find that the more aware of your triggers that you become, the more sensitive a few of them are going to be, especially when they involve our kids. And this is for a variety of reasons. It has to do with our brain chemistry. It has to do with the trauma we went through. It has to do with possibly PTSD, CPTSD, things like that. But the other thing to keep in mind is the constant mom guilt. Because often our kids are on the receiving end of our triggered reactions. They are there when we lash out. They are there when we break down. They are the ones who get us, tired, not responding in the best way. We lash out, we overreact, right? And those moments cause us to feel like crap. And it causes us to feel like horrible, horrible moms. And because of that, as we are becoming aware of these triggers, it can make us feel guilty, where we will begin to then just kind of like implode, where we're afraid to really connect with our kids and we're afraid to, react in this way. So then we overcompensate and then we lose our confidence as moms and then we shrink. And that is not what I want for you. I want you to be the mom that you've always wanted to be. I want you to stand tall and proud and confident and know that you were made to be their mama and that you are not broken, you are human and you are healing. So the very first thing that you need to do when it comes to your triggers is giving yourself some freaking grace. Just what I've talked about, our kids are on the receiving end of things a lot. And that's usually because we're around them a lot. They are with us all the time, especially if they are younger, or like me, if you homeschool, you don't really get a break from your kids. And so that's why these things happen. But it is not beneficial for our children to crap on ourselves and to tell ourselves how terrible we are and how we're bad moms. All that's going to lead to is us not being good moms and lead to us behaving in ways and doing things that we don't want to, simply because that is our default programming. Because once we beat ourselves up, that's what we're going to fall into. Because if we believe that we're horrible, why on earth do we try to be better? Because if we're inherently bad, we can't get better. So one, give yourself grace and recognize that while these behaviors are not okay, they don't make you a bad mom, especially because you are here and you are actively working to get better. So realize that. Take a second, celebrate yourself that you're here listening or watching. Celebrate yourself that you're willing to take responsibility for this. And then give yourself grace for when it inevitably happens. The next thing that I want you to do as you're on this journey, you're already going to be doing this if you're going through the triggered ebook, is you're already going to begin building this awareness, but I want you to seriously double down on this. It is crucial for us as moms to be as aware of as many triggers as possible. Not actively working to heal all of them at once. Don't hear me wrong, okay? That's not what I'm saying. Don't do that. But what I'm saying is the more awareness that you have, the calmer you can be in the moment. If your brain is constant reacting over and over and it has no understanding of where you're at, it's always going to be in that frantic state. But if you're like this and you have the awareness, it's going to slow down. And it's going to be easier to remain calm. It doesn't mean that the triggered moment is gone. It doesn't mean that the trigger doesn't exist. But it means it's not flaring as badly. And it's not showing up as loudly. And it gets calmer and calmer. What this looks like for you is going to be different than what it looks like for me. This is different for literally everybody. literally everybody, because we all have different brains, we all have different trauma. And even though if you're here and you're watching this, chances are you're a mom and chances are you've experienced an abusive relationship, there are commonalities, but all of our brains and our personal experiences are different. There's a lot of overlap, but I want us to understand that we're all different people and that we cannot judge our brain based off of the recovery of someone else. All right, that's my little like soapbox on that moment. But once you have the awareness, you're going to remain more calm. How do you find this awareness? I go into this deeper in the Triggered ebook, but I want you to sit down and think through some situations that have happened where you are not proud of how you reacted. And think of those moments where it comes up a lot. My issue is I'm a yeller. I grew up with yellers. That's how everybody expressed their emotions. And so my default setting is when I am tired or I am hungry or I am angry, I yell. And so I have been actively working on finding my awareness for when that happens. So that way, even if it doesn't stop completely when I want it to, I am aware of it and it happens less often, or I can catch myself in that moment. So I have to actively work to go, okay, when do I usually yell? At what point is my fuse a little bit shorter? When am I feeling less patient? What is my child doing when I yell? Taking the time to get clear on when these things happen and when you're affected is going to help you have the awareness to remain calm in the moment. Because when that comes up and that urge to yell begins to rise in my chest and it begins to like take over, I can go, okay, I know what's happening. I am aware. I've thought through this moment and I'm going to breathe instead. And I'm going to do my best to not completely lose my crap in this moment. So of course, this is easier said than done, but it's possible. But like, I want to be like clear that I'm aware that this is not simple. It's not easy and it takes time, but I am saying that it's worth it. And once you have that awareness, I want you to think through ahead of time how you want to react to those situations. In an ideal world, if you were triggered, how would you react? Would you have a place to put all that energy? Would you be able to walk away? Would you be able to tolerate certain behavior until you're able to get away to a different moment? Like, it all depends on you. But you have to think through how you want to react in that moment. Because again, you have to be prepared, because you can think through one time, okay, I would like to stop yelling. But when push comes to shove and your child's pissing you off, you're going to yell because your brain has no other default. It has no practice in anything else. So you need to make sure that you plan out and you think through how you want to react, how you want to handle these situations, and what you're going to do in those situations. And you also want to think through and process, what are you going to do when you mess up? How are you going to respond? Because there's a lot of panic involved with triggers and all of that guilt. So we need to know A, how we want to respond, B, how we're going to practice this and think through it so it becomes our brain, like it becomes a little more normal to our brain. And lastly, how are we going to handle things when we do mess up and we do lash out and we do have these triggered moments? What am I going to do when I yell at my kid? Right? Like, I have to know ahead of time how I'm going to handle it. I have to know how I'm going to handle my behavior, how I'm going to handle apologizing to my child, how I'm going to work towards changing it in the future. These three things are very important, because if I don't have that knowledge ahead of time, there's going to be panic and fear and embarrassment and shame and guilt and everything tied to that triggered moment, which is only going to make the whole situation worse. So we have to work towards understanding and being aware of where we're at, why we're doing what we're doing, how we can change that, and how we're going to handle it when we inevitably screw up, because we are human. Think this through. I highly recommend you journal this out. Write this down. There is so much magic in putting pen to paper. I'm not going to get into it today because we will be here for another 2 hours. But I am saying that it is worth your time. It is worth your time to sit and journal about this. It doesn't need to take you 2 hours. It can take you 10 minutes. And it could blow your mind with how much you get out on paper and how much it helps when it comes to changing your behavior. The next thing that I want you to do is begin to think through how you're going to ground yourself. So when you're in a triggered moment and you want to remain calm, you've got to ground yourself. This looks different for different people, but the way I interpret it and the way it works for me is I think about every sensation that I'm feeling in my body at that given moment. So I have to think through, okay, what does it feel like when my hands are rubbing on my palm? What does that feel like? What does it feel like right now in my stomach? What is that feeling? How can I name that feeling? I gotta be aware of it. How does it feel to have my feet on the floor? Am I wearing socks? Am I wearing shoes? Am I barefoot? Am I on carpet? Am I on hardwood floor? I have to ground myself in that moment, noticing where you're at, feeling those sensations, listening to the sounds, like even trying to get yourself to like eavesdrop on another conversation in public to like pull you away from that moment and to give your brain a distraction to focus on as it calms down over here, right? Like that seriously helps. Become aware and ground yourself in that moment and go, okay, brain, we are safe. Nothing's gonna hurt us. Our child is not a threat. Our child's having a bad day and it's my job to be a leader and I'm going to be a leader and we are safe. This is important and it seriously matters. Don't overlook this. Don't skip this. I skipped this for the first 7 years of my child's life, and let me tell you, the last year of me being aware of this has been literally life-changing. And you can also look up different grounding exercises. I am not a therapist. I am not a mental health professional. I do not pretend to be. And so you can look up different techniques from mental health professionals that may help you. The second thing I want you to do and to have in your back pocket are breathing exercises. When my son is feeling upset, we work on our breathing. And when we work on our breathing, what we do is we focus on big belly breaths. So you want to breathe in through your nose, but don't expand your chest. Chest breathing can increase anxiety, so you want to do belly breaths. So you want to go in through your nose, make that belly nice and big, and then exhale through your mouth. And then you can do that over and over and over. You can find things like square breathing, which I find to be extremely helpful. Square breathing is the practice of imagining a square and each side of the square is 4 seconds long. So you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds, that's the top of the square. You hold that, not in or out, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, that's the right side of the square. You exhale for 4 seconds, that's the bottom of the square, and then you hold for 4 seconds, that's the left side of the square. And then you just repeat that for as many times as needed. My son really loves this one. There's a lot of fun videos on YouTube that are geared towards kids. There's also ones for adults. So look that up and look through different breathing exercises to help you, because here's the deal. When you are focusing on your breathing, it is impossible for your brain to be in a panic. And this is coming from someone who gets severe panic attacks. So I'm not saying this because it's fun or it's fluffy or it's easy or it's what the latest influencer says. Oh my God, no. Like this saved me when I was literally on a road trip. I had my child and my 2 cats in my car. We were moving from Washington State to Missouri. We were on the freeway going 70 miles an hour leaving Washington, and I started to feel a panic attack rising in my chest. I could not, I felt tight. I felt my eyes start to blur and I was like, all right, I'm on the road. I have my child and my cats. My whole world is in my car right now. I need to get it together. So I took several deep breaths to get my brain out of the initial panic, just long enough for me to call my mom, because we had a whole caravan, my whole family moved. So we had this caravan of cars. So I had to communicate to my mom and let her know what was happening. So then that way we could work towards pulling off on the next exit, because I didn't want to pull off on the side of the freeway. And that breathing got me to a gas station where I was safe and could get out of the car, and then I processed through the panic attack, right? So I'm not saying that this breathing is going to be the remedy for every panic attack you may have in the future and for every trigger. No, but it can get you calm enough in that moment to respond instead of react. And I fully believe that had I not been practicing breathing exercises prior to that panic attack I had in my car, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know if we would have gotten an accident. I don't know if I would have swerved. I don't know if I would have ran myself off the road. I don't know what would have happened. So these breathing exercises are powerful. Don't skip them. Don't overlook them. And then the last thing that I'm going to share with you, I already mentioned it, is to go grab that Triggered ebook. I am so proud of that. I know that it's helping people. It's already helped dozens of women already, and I know that it could help you too. So if you haven't grabbed it, it's KARLEIGH.com/triggered. Down in the show notes if you're listening, down in the show description if you're watching on the podcast. Go download it. It will literally change your relationship with your kids, so you can finally be the mom that you are so desperate to be, that you want to be, that you deserve to be, because you deserve that, mama. I hope this episode helped you. I hope it helped you kind of get a little clearer on how to stay calm during those triggered moments, so you can step into being the mom that you truly desire to be. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll catch you on the next one.